Hello and welcome to Star USA Training. Today is Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. We are recording this webinar. The recording and other materials will be made available after the broadcast. All participants are currently muted. The question and answer feature is available. If you have any questions, you can ask them there as well as on chat. We will answer questions throughout and we'll take more at the end, and I'll recap answers at the end as well. This is accredited for a CCS credit. Email us train@starusa.org after the webinar with the email address you registered with NCBFAA to get those credits, or your NCBFAA number, and we'll make sure that that gets logged to your account. We have a joke at Star USA about how no one intends to work in this field. We all sort of stumble into it. I personally stumbled into it when I moved to Ohio. I took a short-term data entry job with an international trade company that morphed into a long-term job that ended up covering data entry, audit, as well as software development assistance. And I did that while I went to school for my master's degree in social work. I worked in that field for a time, and then I returned to Star USA for a while. I started working on import activity audit, and I also took on assisting with the customs broker course administrative elements. That course was taught by Peggy Easton, who founded Star USA. She started the course in the 1970s, and she has been teaching customs brokers for decades and developed a very rigorous license exam preparation course that all of our internal employees who move on to become brokers go through, as well as it's offered to outside participants. I really love a challenge, and when I heard that the broker's exam had very low pass rates, I decided to take it. I took the course and the test, both of which I passed, and then I started managing clients and staff and regulatory integrity, and I now teach the customs broker exam prep course. I'm personally a huge nerd. If you have interacted with me before, you definitely know that. And I like making the complex pieces that we deal with of the regulations, the practice with the government agencies, making the business for an importer or an exporter work, as well as bringing in freight forwarders and goods and all of that. But I'm here to tell you that you don't have to be that engaged to benefit from a broker's license. Star USA, like I said, we've been around for a while. I believe this is our 25th year in business, and we do a lot of things. What I'm here to talk to you about today is our customs broker exam prep course. That begins on January 28th, and we'll talk more about the details of our course at the end of the webinar. I'm also here to talk to you about the steps that you need to take to become a customs broker. It can seem daunting, but it's really just about following the steps. So we'll talk about some of the benefits of getting a license, a step-by-step guide to getting your license, and then we'll talk about the exam, because the exam is probably the biggest hurdle to getting your license because it's one of the key things that you need. We are really excited today because for the first time we're holding a contest for all of the live attendees. One of you can win a spot in our broker's exam prep course for free. So make sure you stick around till the end of the webinar for all of the details about how to enter to win. So we're going to talk about being a licensed customs broker and why that's good for you. So really, you are holding a credential that says that the US government has reviewed your capabilities and found them ample. There's only about 14,500, there we go, active licensed customs brokers in the US. My license number starts with 31,000, just to put that in there. And that increased knowledge makes you more valuable to employers, and not just customs brokerage employers, but all importers, exporters, and anyone who has to deal with compliance. It also shows that you are professionally motivated and that when you attempt a goal, you achieve it, because this is not an easy thing to get, and it requires jumping through multiple hoops. So it's a anyone who knows what it involves understands what level of dedication it takes to achieve. It can also lead to higher income or earning potential. The average US salary for customs brokers is around $70,000. It obviously varies depending on the state that you live in and the cost of living there. And it also matters what you're doing with that license. It has very good job security. It is continuing to grow as a field, and we know that there's only about 15,000 active brokers, but there's up to 120,000 jobs available for those brokers. So there's high demand, and there's also the ability to advance in a career. So the first step, you need to decide that you want to do it and then write down the reasons why. It may be because you like a challenge. It may be because you want to make $75,000 a year. It might be because you deal a lot with compliance in your day to day and you'd like to understand why you're pushing the buttons you're pushing. You should also think about any of the reasons why not, including maybe it's not going to apply to what you want to do long term. Maybe it's very time consuming. You need to have your why and have considered the why nots, so that when it's hard and you don't want to study, or you're really tired of filling out forms, you know why you're going to keep going. Maybe you're somebody who writes it down. Maybe you're somebody who needs to tell others and work together with a group. Find what works for you, but understand why you want to do what you're doing. Step 2 is find a prep course. We really recommend this. So the exam is offered twice a year in April and October, and prep courses usually last 3 to 6 months. And that gives you enough time to review all of the information, become familiar with the materials, etc. So you want to make sure that your course is a good course. You want it to have the type of learning that fits your learning style. You want it to have materials that will build what you're bringing with you to the exam, so that you walk in there prepared and comfortable. And you want to be able to talk to your peers about questions and issues. Some people are taking the exam as a group and they have coworkers to study with, and some people are very isolated, and it is incredibly helpful to be able to talk through why a specific classification is chosen, or argue out an idea in the regulations until you're confident in it. Also keep in mind, you have to be a US citizen to take the exam. So if you're not a US citizen, cross that off first. You also need to be at least 18 to take the exam and not be a government employee. Then you're going to pull together your resources. So it is an open book, open note exam, and you can take in any written materials you want, no electronic devices. But if you look at all of the resources that Customs says to bring, if you print those out double-sided and you stack them up, it is at least 1 foot tall of very small text and large margins. That's a lot of information. So a big part of our prep course and other good courses is aimed at helping you develop the resources that you're going to take into the exam, as well as into your practice in your daily life. I personally use the resources that we develop weekly. I get annual emails from past students who say, "Hey, do you have this resource updated for this year?" Because they use it all of the time and they hand it out to their coworkers. And we send those out regularly. They're fantastic. Step 4 is study. You are going to spend most of your free time studying for the exam. This is when you really want to focus on your motivations. So the reason that you're going to spend time studying is the exam's 80 questions. Those topics can cover anything from the regulations and the HTS, and you want to be familiar enough with your 1 or 2 feet tall of resources that you can either answer it on your own or quickly flip there. Then you're going to register for the exam. And there's a short window where you can register, and Customs posts that notice of examination on their website. And you have to apply no later than 30 days before the exam date, and they don't open it until a few months before the exam date. The application fee is $390. It was raised from $200 a couple of years ago. And there's 2 components of registration. You have to first sign up for the exam, and once you do that, they'll send you an email shortly to select the specific site where you're going to test. Then you take the exam. Again, a couple of years ago, they switched the exam from being written to electronic, and it's given at contracted testing sites, and those testing sites sometimes switch from the company that's running the exam. It's usually on the 4th Wednesday in April and October. The next one is April 21st, 2021. You have to, one other thing that we recommend in a prep course is that they get you familiar with taking an electronic test. So some courses are oriented around a written exam. I know that we were, because for decades that's what it was. And we had to completely overhaul our curriculum to get students acclimated to an electronic testing environment, because the pass rates for that first electronic exam just bottomed out, and they're already low. So if they go that bad, that's pretty rough. It's a different environment. Then you wait for your results. CBP emails your results within 60 days from the exam. Those answers are usually posted on CBP's website before you get the email. So we always recommend that as you test, you write down your answers to each question so that you can compare them to the posted answers, because Customs won't let you bring a copy of the test out with you. They post the copy of the test the following day, usually, but you can bring your answers. And then you can either prepare for a protest that you want to send to Customs in case you don't pass, or you can help out your fellow test takers by reviewing them and emailing Customs if they have gotten anything incorrect. And this last exam, there were several questions, I think five or 10 questions that Customs came back and corrected their answers once they received response from the trade. Once you pass the exam, then you can apply for your license. And you have to do that within 3 years of passing the exam. So you start out on the Customs website, you'll fill in a specific form. The application fee is $200, and then you'll also pay for fingerprinting and processing. So you usually write Customs a check at the port where you want to transact Customs business as a broker. Different ports charge different amounts. So if you're applying at Cleveland, you can call Cleveland and say, "Hey, what's the full amount of the payment that I'm going to send in?" Or you can call San Antonio and ask them. When you apply, you also go through some reviews. So Customs does a background investigation. Then Customs itself reviews the background details and any other information from your application. Then finally, you move on to the interview process. Now, when you fill out your application, you need to add character references. They don't have to be work references, but they should know you well enough to answer how you engage professionally. You'll also send copies of your credit reports. You can just freecreditreport.com or any of the credit agencies' free reports, and they'll look at any arrest records. So you'll submit that as part of your application if that's the case. Arrests or convictions don't necessarily preclude you from getting a license. And Customs usually works to issue licenses within 6 months of applying. Sometimes it may take longer because of how in-depth the application is, how many places the applicant has lived, how busy the port is, etc. There's all sorts of things. So I will also tell you that, I don't know if this helps or not. When I applied, Customs didn't call any of my references. I was very nervous about putting references down, even though I had great professional references, but so many of them were not in the field of brokerage that I was really terrified that Customs wouldn't accept them because, I was coming from a background of psychology and social work. And Customs didn't call any of my references, including my employer at the time. And I have been used as a reference on several license applications, and I've never been contacted. So generally, I think that happens if there's any issues in the background check, potentially. And mine also took a while because I have moved a lot. So there were several addresses. I think you have to add all the addresses you've lived within a certain time frame, and I had to attach multiple pages. So that was fun. Then once you get your license, celebrate. You made it through a whole bunch of steps and you have become a licensed customs broker. That is fantastic. And then you're going to want to maintain your license. So previously, Customs had it set so that you had to, if you worked for a brokerage, you did not have to complete the triennial status report. They just updated that process so that every 3 years from a specific date, not every 3 years from the time you get your license. So those years are 2021, 2024, 2027, etc. You need to complete a triennial status report. And you can log in to a portal that they just created and submit your status. And your status is essentially entering your license and the date it was issued. And then you tell Customs whether or not you are practicing Customs business and if you have broken any regulations, and then update your address, and that's it. You also have to pay them $100 every 3 years. So that part's not as awesome, but it's to make sure that Customs knows who's active and practicing. You should also stay updated on what Customs is proposing for licensed customs brokers. So right now they are proposing continuing education requirements. And there's no details about that, but if they say that you have to finish a certain amount of CEUs, you need to be sure that you're doing that and you're logging those. Okay, that's all the steps. We're going to talk a little bit about the exam. As we said, feel free to ask questions throughout and we can also answer them at the end. The exam consists of 80 multiple choice questions, and you look at that and you think, okay, that's not so bad. There's 5 hours to do it, 4.5 or 5 hours. I said that like 30 minutes doesn't make a huge difference, but it really does. It used to be 4 hours and then they increased it to 4.5, which is great. A passing score is 75%, so you have to correctly answer 60 questions to pass. It's only given twice a year, so if you don't pass, you have to wait 6 months to take it again. It's open book. They did add electronic versions of the regulations and the HTS to their testing materials this time, but I heard from many, many people and from customs themselves that if test takers used those electronic references, it was crashing their exams. So that's kind of tricky. So you never want to rely on the electronic references. You want to make sure you're bringing your own. And you can take the exam any amount of times if you don't pass. But again, you have to pay $390 every time you take the exam. And no one wants to do that. So you want to make sure that if you are investing your time, potentially your money for paying for a prep course, the money for paying for the exam, as well as setting aside time to take an exam that's only offered every 6 months, that you are using that and successful. So the exam covers a number of topics, and they have also recently added in ACE because so much of customs business is conducted in ACE, or the automated commercial environment. You can see generally they break down questions into about 14 or 15 categories that cover a very wide range of topics, regulations, etc. The pass rate averages to about 15%. There have been exams that have a 2% pass rate and exams that have, I've seen up to 34% pass rate. So they're obviously varying levels of difficulty. But between 2,500 and 3,000 people take the test each year, and an average of 350 to 400 pass the exam annually. The recent pass rates have been lower. The transition to electronic exam has been rough on test takers, and I believe on customs as well. But you can pass if you are appropriately prepped. So our tips are based on, like I said, decades of experience in taking the exam for our employees, as well as working to prepare other brokers and potential brokers to both pass the exam and become good customs brokers. So our first tip is get familiar with the material. You don't have to try to memorize it. There's so much, but you want to be able to go to your regulations or your HTS and find a specific topic in a very short amount of time, because some of the questions are very simple. And if you find the quote from the question in the regulation that you're looking at, you can also easily find the answer. But some of them require actual logic and critical thinking. And for those, you need to have time to analyze and decide. And so you need to be able to quickly access those references. A good trick is looking at past exams to learn what kinds of questions are asked the most and where you find the answers. So sometimes we will go in and we will put hash marks near found citations to show how often customs references those. Because again, you don't need to get every question right. You won't get, and your employer won't get, whether you were a 90%er or a 76%er. It doesn't matter. It's a pass fail. So you just need those 60 questions right. Then organize your material. It's going to save you so much time on the exam and help you find what you're looking for. We recommend either a catalog rack that holds all your documents and lets you easily flip through, or using large binders to hold your documents. Use tabs and labels to separate sections. Our material package does include a rack and tabs and labels, and I have some students who will just ask if they can purchase tabs and labels. So, hey, I'm moving my copy of the regs because it's 5 years old. Can I get another copy of the tabs because they're great? So we do that too. You can also give yourself kind of a code with highlighting where different colors mean different topics or different elements. Then one of the biggest things is practice with classification, HTS classification. It is the largest part of the exam. It's usually 15 to 20 questions on its own and then related to another 5 to 15. We do recommend that you memorize, not necessarily word for word, but the gist of the GRIs, and make sure that you're looking at section and chapter notes, as well as at least familiar with customs informed compliance publications. Then you want to understand valuation, because while the section of the exam is small, it's usually, I would say, 3 to 6 questions. Those concepts then spill into things like practical exercises and entry, which tend to be larger. So you want to focus on things like transaction value, assists, and fees. This is a really big one. You need to understand Customs Form 7501. And Customs issues it with the instruction sheet, which it says instruction sheet, but there's about 30 pages of instructions that tells you both how to read and fill out the form. So often questions on the exam will give you a picture of a partially filled out form or a box and ask you to fill in blanks. Start studying 3 to 4 months at least before the exam. You don't need to study every day, but you want to, again, be confident in the materials when you walk into the exam. And you do that by gradually building layers of familiarity. It's harder if you cram. Take practice exams. Those are online. We recommend practicing with exams from the past 3 to 4 years because regs change and the HTS changes, and you don't want to get familiar with something that doesn't match today's answers. We include all of Customs past exams from the past 5 years in our course in the practice questions that we do weekly. And then, of course, one tip is join our Customs Broker Prep course. That's good for passing the exam. It's a 13-week online course, help you pass your first time. The next session starts January 28th, so right about 2 weeks. We've been doing this for over, I would say, I think it's more than 30 years. And you can register online at that address. It is administered by a licensed customs broker. I can't say expert because that's me and that just sounds braggy. But in all seriousness, we have excellent teachers for this course, and the preparation is something that's collaborated on by multiple customs brokers with decades of experience. It's very organized, and we have optimized it so that we took a course that sometimes ran for 8 months and brought it down to 13 weeks to meet the demands of what modern test takers are dealing with. Our practice exams are structured like CBP's exam. We do electronic testing to get you very comfortable and familiar with that methodology. You have unlimited access to past customs brokers exams thorough study guides that help you through the course, as well as build your material cheat sheets for the exam. And we have a lot of test taking tips that are given throughout. Our webinars are on demand. There's also live review sessions that I think are really helpful if you can come and ask questions. We have materials, more than 1,500 pages of self-developed course material, over 4,000 past exam questions that have been reviewed and audited, and there's messaging with instructor, other students, and other STAR personnel. These are some things that past students have said. I'm not going to read them aloud, but I teach this course because I know how valuable it is, and I know how much it helped me when I took it, and how much I rely on the knowledge and the materials that I gained from it regularly. I also know that the onus on not just passing the test, but on being a very good customs broker is something that ethically I feel very good about. So we do have limited space. You can register at this link. Materials are not included with the course because some students choose to get their materials in different formats. They prefer a book format or something else, and that's just fine. If you want materials, you can purchase the materials package in addition to purchasing the course. We cover a huge amount of topics, and these are kind of subtopics of the 15 or so subjects that customs looks at. Things like customs bonds, classification, anti-dumping, protests, quotas, brokers and how to be a good one, etc. The materials package has all of the items that customs says to bring to the exam, like the HTS, the regulations, instructions for 7501, right to make entry directive, the ACE business rules and process document. We also include labels, tabs, reference guides, this Incoterms reference guide that's provided, that's laminated, that and the HTS laminated guides are some of the best items that you can bring with you to the exam because they're quick references and you can even answer some questions without actually touching your materials when you use those, as well as a catalog stand that allows your huge volume of materials to stand up and be easily flipped through. Also provide some elements that help with value, etc. So this is how we stack up against other popular CB courses. As you can see, our course isn't the cheapest, but we believe that it's the most comprehensive course on the market. And we do this because we care about people being able to pass the exam and then be successful in your career. We give you access to the course until you pass the exam. So if you don't pass the first time for any number of reasons, we let you keep taking it again. We're the only course that is using Slack as a members only community and chat platform. So that lets you talk with other students, instructors, etc. And if you take the course, that has 20 CCS credits available through the NCB FAA, which is great if you want to be a certified customs specialist. That gets you a whole lot in there. Register by January 27th. Materials, again, not included with the course. If you register on the 27th, I'll tell you, you won't have your materials on the 28th when we start, but you will get them quickly and you will not be in trouble if you don't have your materials on day one. Here are the rules for the contest. So email train@starusa.org by midnight tonight, midnight Eastern. Include your name, email, and phone number and why you'd like to win the contest. We will choose a winner randomly and announce it by 3 o'clock tomorrow. So the winner will get free access to the course, but materials are not included, so that will still need to be purchased separately. The contest is only open to new students and not those currently registered in the course. So I'm going to answer some questions as well as remind you again, the webinar is approved for a CCS credit. So email train@starusa.org within the next week, and then we'll submit that so that you have that. And there's a quick survey immediately following the webinar. We love your feedback as we prep our webinar topics for 2021. All right, so we had some question and answers during the webinar. I'm going to take a look at them. So one question was, what types of organizations employ customs brokers other than freight forwarders? And are they typically 9-to-5 jobs? There are a lot of organizations other than freight forwarders. So shipping lines, importers, exporters, customs brokerage firms, most of those are 9-to-5. And a lot of the companies that we work with have a customs broker on staff to handle their compliance. So those are companies like manufacturing companies or anybody who is importing or exporting. They might want someone who has a customs broker license. There is a recording. We will send that out. If you don't pass the exam the first time, you can have access to the course at no charge until you pass the exam. The recording and presentation will be available for later viewing. So this is a good question. If you have the 2018 edition of the regulations and the HTS, can you reuse those? And I would say it's a little bit of a gamble. And the reason you probably can, if I were going to take the exam again, I would feel confident that I would pass with a 2018 version. Now, two things have changed drastically since 2018 in the regulations. So you could print out those two areas. One of them is USMCA is now in effect instead of NAFTA. So that section has been updated. Another, and that spills over into like merchandise processing fee as well. And the other is drawback. So now we're operating under modernized drawback. So you could just change out those two sections from online. The HTS last had an international change in 2017. So if you have a 2018 version of that, you should be okay to the 6th digit of classification, but you may run into some questions where the last 4 option that they give you doesn't match what is in your HTS. So you're going to potentially miss some questions if you just take those in. But if you feel pretty confident that you would have gotten like 90% on the exam and you're willing to give up 5, 10, 15% for resources that are outdated, then go ahead and do that. Okay, how many hours a day do we suggest studying between now and the April exam? When I took it, I spent between 10 and 20 hours a week, because you're going to be reading, organizing your materials, highlighting information, and then taking exams. That's a lot of time. I hope I didn't make you start crying right there. So I usually did about an hour a day and then half to a full weekend day, depending on the topic for that week. So that's what I would say. If you want to just buy some of the materials, uh, you can buy the other material elements online. So you can go to the government bookstore and buy the HTS and regulations there. And each question on the exam is worth the same amount of points. They're, I think, about like 1.25 point in order to make it so that the total is 100. So a licensed customs broker working at a freight forwarder, the advantages that you would have are you're going to catch things for your clients. You're going to see classifications that are funky and be able to alert them to that before customs does. Your specific employer may have advancement opportunities, but you may also, if your employer is listening to this, I'm very sorry. You may also find that having a customs broker license and freight forwarding experience allows you to go into manufacturing or an importer or an exporter and run their compliance department for them at a salary change, usually higher. So it may not impact your day-to-day a lot, but it will update, it will give you benefits elsewhere. If you are already a licensed customs broker, you don't need to take the exam because theoretically you've already taken it. If you are working for a customs broker, but you haven't taken it before, you should have some benefits when you're taking the exam because some of the topics should be familiar to you. Sometimes it can be difficult because they're presented in a different way. We get used to topics that are presented from our employer's perspective, and customs looks at things in a very specific orientation. And so a lot about a prep course is learning how to view it through a customs lens so you can answer the questions that way. If you register for the April exam, yes, I do think that you have enough time to prep for that. Our course is 13 weeks long and it's starting January 28th. So you should be just fine. Now, you may start taking the course and get into it and think, okay, I actually want to take about 8 or 9 months to get familiar with this. And you may not register for this round of the exam. We have a number of students who elect to do that, who take the course, but they don't register for that round of the exam. Then they take the course again, the next exam, and are successful on that one. When we say actively practicing broker, the question that customs asks is, are you doing customs business? So that means, are you submitting information to customs on behalf of another party? You do not have to be doing that to keep your license open, but you do have to complete the triennial status report to keep your license open. I have not studied for exams in other countries. I don't know. I would tell you, you would need to get recertified in other countries because their regulations are different. So for example, in Mexico, it is on the customs broker to be right in the information that they submit on behalf of an importer. And if they don't, they can lose their license. Whereas in the United States, obviously you want to do your due diligence, but it's ultimately on the importer to give the broker accurate information. So I've not taken or exams or attempted to study regulations in any of the other countries. And you would need to do those separately. The price for materials is, I'm going to look back at my information, I believe $750. Yes, $750. And for the course, it's $1775. Hey, congrats, you passed your exam. That's fantastic. So you passed your exam not in the customs broker industry before. So the kind of position that you can go with is really any. I recommend that you think about what you want to do. So do you want to work with a company where you are helping them handle their specific compliance issues? If you want to do that, apply to individual companies. Now, if you want to work with a team, you could apply to a larger company, somebody like Ford, etc., who's going to have a group that's working together on compliance. Smaller companies, you would probably be working on this on your own. So think about what kind of work environment you want. You could also apply at a customs broker or a freight forwarder or any number of things. I see open job positions, emails everywhere. So you can search keywords like trade compliance, customs broker, LCB, etc. That stands for licensed customs broker. All right. If you have any more questions, let's see, okay. If you have any more questions, feel free to email those. train@starusa.org is someplace that Melissa and I will see your emails. The whole team as well will also be able to take a look if you have any questions. And I'm excited to see so many interested customs brokers on here, as well as people who are at varying points along the journey. There should not be an age limit to keep your license open. Everything is, the only age requirements are you must be 18 to take the exam and 21 to get your license. So you can take the exam 3 years before you apply for your license. And that's it for today. Remember, if you want CCS credits, please email us, train@starusa.org. If you're interested in taking the exam prep course and you want to enter for a free course, email us, train@starusa.org. Give us your name, your email address, phone number, as well as a paragraph about why you want to win. Thank you so much. Talk to you later.